I'm Lesley and this is Jeremy. We're Liz's mum and dad, and Liz was our middle child. She was born in 1989 in Poole, with older sister Caroline and younger brother Andrew.
When Liz was in her final year at middle school, she started complaining about pain in her left leg, to the extent that a lot of the things she liked doing, like dancing and so on, she just couldn't do anymore because it hurt too much. So we took her to the GP, who was fortunately quite clued up, and sent her for an X-ray at the local hospital.
In the X-ray you could clearly see there was a mass on her shin bone, and so she underwent some procedures in our local hospital which were quite invasive really. They scraped away the mass and attempted bone graft with bone from her pelvis, and they did this twice, and I think it was the second time they sent some of the material off to Glasgow for analysis.
Yeah, and the next thing we knew, we had a notification of an appointment at the Royal National Orthopaedic Hospital at Stanmore, before we'd even had feedback from the local consultant, so it was a bit scary when something like that hits you out of the blue.
Yeah, so we went up and had an appointment with the consultant there, and we were told that it was adamantinoma, and it was described as a very rare form of tumour.
Cancer was never mentioned at that point, but this is 20 odd years ago, so perhaps it wasn't classed as a cancer then, we don't know.
It was explained to us that there was no non-invasive treatment that could help Liz, like no chemo, no radiotherapy, because this tumour didn't respond. So the only option was surgery. And so what seemed like a very big operation was carried out, where Liz's tibia was largely removed and her fibula was grafted in its place. And there was lots of metalwork to hold it there whilst we waited for the bone graft to take. So she was on crutches for months, and with constant checks to make sure that the bone graft was taking.
And it was just beginning to take after 6-9 months. It wasn't very successful as a bone graft went, sadly. But her left ankle, the bottom of her left leg, began to get very warm. It started to swell, and we obviously went back, and they had a look at it, and they did a biopsy on it to see what was going on.
We really hoped that it was just an infection, but devastatingly we were told that the adamantinoma had returned, which was a huge shock. We thought it had been removed. So we then had a huge decision to make with Liz, and she was offered further reconstructive surgery or below-knee amputation. And she made a list of the pros and cons, and we still got that list at home. And she decided that she absolutely had enough of being
a patient. She wanted to become a normal teenager.
Yeah.
And she chose amputation, which was very brave for a 13-year-old.
And we had to let her make that decision. That was incredibly difficult.
Yeah.
Her physiotherapist said to her, if there's anything you want to do in life, it's not going to be your leg that stops you, and she absolutely embraced that. So after years of being restricted, it was like she learned to fly, so she...
well, not literally.
But she went on a gap year.
She went to Africa.
Yeah, she did a bungee jump, she went off to university, she absolutely lived her life to the full. And then she was inspired by the London 2012 Olympics.
And Paralympics.
Yes.
And she found that she was quite good at riding her bike very fast, and got on the GB Paracycling team, represented her country around the world.
She did, yeah. We went to support her, which was amazing. She won a bronze medal for her country. We should explain that she had checkups for 10 years.
Yeah, she'd had checkups for routine annual, every 6 months to begin with, and then annually. And 10th anniversary, she was given the all clear, and we celebrated in style with champagne, didn't we?
We did, yes. And so everything was going really well for Liz in her career. She was engaged to be married. She was really enjoying being on the paracycling team. And then 5 years after she'd been given the all clear, she was really unwell with what seemed like a really nasty chest infection. Yeah,
possibly aches and pains, which physio trainers thought might be just bone injuries from training and muscle injuries from overtraining in her back in particular, which she'd always struggled with from riding. The position you needed was always a bit painful in her back, which was understandable. It's quite awkward at times.
So anyway, they arranged for various scans, and it was clear from those that the cancer was back. And it was in her spine, in her lungs, and in her ribs. And I remember Jack saying there were so many tumours in her chest, they just couldn't count them all.
No.
And it was only because she was so fit that it hadn't really been picked up earlier.
Yeah, I mean, at one point, a bit later on, she was struggling with her breathing, and I think this might have even been during one of the lockdowns. But she walked into A&E, and they looked at her various levels, SATS levels, and all that sort of thing, and they couldn't believe how she'd managed to walk in there. Somebody like you should be in a wheelchair or lying down, but she was still very fit and active despite everything.
That was part of Liz's approach, that she always made sure that she was as good as she could be in whatever situation she found herself in. So she would never have gone in a wheelchair. And when she had her hospital appointment, she would always walk in, be smartly dressed, ready to meet those consultants to face whatever they had to tell her. So then that was a life-changing moment. And she asked the question, how long do I have? And I remember that day very clearly, they said possibly 1 to 2 years. We hope to be treating you for a lot longer than that. In fact, 2 years was about the time that she had left. About a year after her re-diagnosis, Liz and Jack decided to set up the fund. I think Liz was very frustrated that so little had changed from when she was diagnosed as a teenager. And she talked to Jack about it and said that she wanted that to be her legacy. She talked about making a dent in the science so that things would be different in the future.
Yeah, I mean, it just gave her the idea that she, feeling she was doing something, she knew she couldn't save herself.
I think Liz, one of the things Liz said to Jack was, if I don't raise funds for my little rare mutating cancer cells, then who will? And yes, and it gave her some ownership of a situation where medically she had none, really. So it was very positive, and it gave us all something different to focus on, and made us all feel that we were doing something that would help someone at some stage.
In the anniversary of the fund launch was only a couple of days ago. Something came up on our photo memories from 4 years in 2019 of the first event that they did, which was in a typical London thing, as an upstairs room of a pub, which was meant to hold, licensed for 70 people. And they were worried that nobody would come, and in the end there were 90 people in there. We had to push all the tables to one side because there was no room for anybody.
It was absolutely packed, and it was like a magical evening, really, because that huge wave of support for Liz, a hugely successful launch.
Yeah, it wasn't just family, friends, colleagues, people from British Cycling in Manchester came down. Yeah, it was great. From the quiz night, she quickly moved on to Waterloo Station, where we had a bucket shake on for one day. So we able to catch the morning rush hour and the evening rush hour. Back in the day, 2019, there were lots of people on the station. Maybe not so many now, but we had a sort of relay of people during the day, didn't we? And,
we did, yes.
And so we finished about, just after 7 o'clock, I think, and we thought, how are we going to get this literally bucket full of money back to their flat? So we took a taxi, didn't we, in the end of this, and £900 is a heavy amount of cash in a bucket.
Yes,
and
we tipped it all out on the floor, and she counted it all.
Yeah,
yes, it was
great.
Yes, it was great. And one of Lizzie's favourite events that was organised was a dog show at the care home where her grandparents lived, and she really loved that. She helped to judge the categories, and that was a lovely afternoon, seeing the interaction between the residents and all the dogs that came along. That was such good fun. So that's a really happy memory of fundraising.
Yes, my parents weren't there, but that's where they lived, but they'd already died by that point. So, but it was a nice connection. We'd kept the connection between ourselves and the care home, because some of the staff there were particularly welcoming and friendly, and they were only too happy to stage a dog show, and apparently they've continued to do it over the years for other charities since, haven't they?
We've started something there, yes. Yeah. I know Liz was so thrilled when the first call went out for the adamantinoma ideas grant, and she really felt that we'd taken the first step along the way, and that we were going to make a difference. So that was a really good moment. Yeah,
she's so thrilled with Jack that we'd got to that stage, or she'd got to that stage so fast. It was only 6 to 9 months after launching the fund that there was enough money to even contemplate issuing a call for, the grant call.
When the fund was launched, it seemed like a really daunting first target, and you think we're never going to raise that, and then there's just this huge wave of support for Liz and for us, and we did, and she saw that. So we're always really glad that she saw that. I feel connected to Liz through the fund, and we honour her with all our efforts, really, and to know that we might be making a difference for people in the future is something. It's a good feeling.
Yes, I think that's the main thing, is that her memory is helping other people, which is what she wanted to do.
Yeah, she wanted that to be her legacy, and that's why we keep doing it.
Yeah,
and it's such good fun, and it gives you a sense of achievement. Or if another family was thinking of setting up a fund, I'd say absolutely go for it. It brings people together, it's really good fun, it gives you a feeling of achievement, perhaps at a really difficult time, and you get lots of support from BCRT. You should definitely go for it.
Yeah. And Liz did originally think, need to set up a charity, and then quickly realised that setting up your own charity is actually quite hard work, and you'd spend all your time doing that and not actually raising any money for your aim. So when she realised BCRT were out there and were able to take all that administrative workload on, and then she could just concentrate on the message, that was a big step forward. And I think it's something that other people definitely should embrace. It's for a single focus issue, it's too much like hard work setting up your own charity, I think.
I joined the PPIP panel earlier this year, and I thought it'd be a really good way, a different way to get involved with the charity. And it was an absolute revelation to me that I could be involved with the funding without any scientific or medical background. So recently I was absolutely privileged to do a lay review of one of the applications for the adamantinoma funding, which was fascinating and so good to be involved with that after all everybody's hard work with the fundraising. The Bone Cancer Research Trust is just an amazing organisation, and we were saying we really wished that it had been around when Liz was first diagnosed all those years ago.
Yeah. 20 years ago it was very much you were on your own. You could, even then you could look things up, but it was all to do with surgery and bad news and horrible things, and there was no support network in place for any of these conditions really, and it was, we realised the benefit that it must have to current patients. It's a big support network.
It can feel very lonely when you're diagnosed with something rare like bone cancer, but with Bone Cancer Research Trust there's always someone who can support you, because you can find someone who's been through it or something similar. So yeah, it's a charity that's so close to our hearts.